Imagine my surprise when I went to upload this video this afternoon and discovered that only 20 seconds had successfully recorded. You might find that to be helpful or wanted, but there's some points that I really want to get across to you on this issue. Make sure I'm recording. Good. First off, this is about recruitment and overall training. What I like to do when I do this course in person is I move this chapter up right after the history portion and the legal portion, and then we talk about, from recruitment through retirement, including the training, including the special assignments, and kind of like how a career could develop, and management and all of that stuff. But in this format, you kind of got to go with the chapters, because I have to break the chapters up in any event. So recruitment. This is a really big issue. Who are the police going to get to be cops? You get a couple things going on. You have a very negative press, the media, which does not accurately report things. And if you question that, take a look into the real facts as to what happened in Ferguson, Missouri, and see if the real facts were reported. The next thing you've got is you have a fairly decent amount of sentiment from the public that's loud. I think I put a link up earlier that in the semester that talked about the relative place in society where the police fit, and it was pretty interesting, because now, even with all of this noise, the police have a very similar position in society that they have had historically. Not a big change. It went down quite a bit after Ferguson, and then as the truth started to come out about that incident, it started to raise back up. It'll be interesting to see what happens if we have a continued increase in crime. 2018 was a pretty good year for violent crime, but we'll see what happens longer term. The next thing you got is you got a good economy, and classically that is when people with college degrees go to the private sector for jobs, and maybe that results in you only getting, or not only getting, but getting a acceptable pool of candidates that have wanted to do law enforcement for a long time and have really put thought into it, and not just said, yes, how hard could it be? Yeah, a cup of coffee, a couple of donuts, drive around for 8 hours, wave at people. Can't be that hard. We get a significant amount of that in the business, in law enforcement. So those are the two things that you're facing. A friend of mine who's a professor at Cal State Fullerton, his son recently got hired by a police department, and I was thinking to myself, why? Why are you doing this now? But he's moving along. The next thing, that's the first point I want to talk about. There's going to be 5 points today. This is number 2, the process. The process is laid out in the PowerPoint, so I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to talk briefly about the interview, because that's really kind of mystical, and what kind of questions are they going to ask? Well, unless there's been a radical change, and there could be, because we're getting more people that have been educated in the current system of research, that you may have people that are in places to make decisions, certain decisions, who are going to ask different kinds of questions. But this is pretty much the way that most go. The first question you're going to get asked is, tell me a little bit about yourself. And that's your cue to come up with a 90-second killer introduction. Who you are, where you're from, education, language skills, if you have language skills, why you're looking into law enforcement, what is the thing that drives you to law enforcement. And this thing, everybody's got a story. Sit down and think about your story. And everybody I talk to says, oh, no, I got nothing. You know, I'm just walking down the street, mind my own business. What do you think? Well, let me tell you a story. I had a student in class who was looking to get into law enforcement, and she was on the surface a great candidate. You know, she was tall, had a good presence to her, a good outgoing personality. She could talk to people. So I asked her, well, what's your story? I got nothing. Well, we talked for a little bit, and it turns out that she was from Northern California and went to a very small school, very small high school. And she was able to play football on the boys' football team. She was a place kicker and then played corner and defense. And the reason she played corner was because she had a little bit of speed, but she also liked to hit. Now, she may think that was just no big deal, but let me tell you, when she talks about that in an interview, the cops are going to eat that up, because there's times that you actually have to be aggressive with people, and some people shy away from that and can never engage that. Then the rest of her story is even more amazing. Just before football in her senior year, before practice starts for the summer, she and the family go to Hawaii. They land at West Maui Airport, they jump in their rental car, drive out the street, turn onto the highway. A drunk driver blows a red light and center punches a car, kills mom right there. Dad is very seriously injured. Brother is seriously injured. She spends about 3 or 4 days in Hawaii by herself, doing what she can to make the funeral arrangements for her mother, take care of her father and her brother. West Maui PD was absolutely awesome. They took care of her. They had a guard out by her hotel room so that she was, she felt safe. She didn't have to worry about stuff. They flew her from Maui to the Big Island where Dad had been life-flighted, so that she could spend time with him. Then flew her back so she could spend time with her brother. She then spent a good part of the next year helping Dad and brother learn how to walk again, and Dad had trouble, speech problems, and so they had to do all those kind of things. What a story! I got nothing. Almost. I tell you what. So she had a great story, and you've got a great story. You just have to sit down and think about it. 90-second killer opening. Second question. Probably going to be something that will involve the police department. So this is a good time make sure you know mission, vision, values. You should take some time reading newspapers about the city, about the police department. See what kind of controversies are out there, what you can dig up. Always good stuff to know. And how you present it, is up to you. So they may say, well, look at the value statement, and if you can go, yes, I do, and even recite it, that's going to kill. They're going to be killer. They'll eat that up. But then they may ask you, well, what quality do you have that matches our values? So you kind of got to think about that one. That's the second question. Third question. Third question is going to be an integrity question, more than likely. And they're going to want to know what you're going to do in a situation where another officer steals something, lies, writes a false report, something of that nature. Now, I mean, I find it unbelievable, but in the interviews that I've done, and I've probably sat in more than 1,000 interviews in the course of my career, and many people come in and think that the answer to that is, well, I'm going to help the officer and cover his tracks. Instant fail, right then and there. Instant fail. You're not going. You don't want to do that. Think what's required of a police officer. Think of the value statements, which are all going to have the word integrity in there. They're not going to want to hear how you're going to do something that's going to make the cops look like the way many people feel about them. Fourth question. This is going to be a question. You can expect a deadly force question. And this is something that you need to do a little soul searching on yourself. Sit down and think about it. You know, do you have the ability to take a life? And if you don't, that's great. But figure that out now. Don't figure it out when you have to make a decision and other people's lives are on the line. Or maybe your families. If you can't react and you get killed, you know, somebody's going to have to tell your parents. Somebody's going to have to tell your spouse. Somebody's going to raise your children. You know, make that decision early and really think about that. Fifth question. This one's really cool because they always ask this, and I hate this because I know the answer to the first part. Do you have any questions for us? And that, your answer there is no. You don't have any questions. If you're thinking, well, how long until I know whether I passed or know the outcome, when is the next step, what is the next step, and those kind of, no. It will all come to you. And the PowerPoint will tell you pretty much the steps. But they will say, do you have any questions for us? Or do you have anything you'd like to add? That's a 30-second recap of your 90-second statement. Tell me your story, the qualities that you bring to the table. And do it in a succinct fashion. Have it planned out. Know exactly what you're going to say. And then that way you can you can knock that out of the park. And those are the things. Now that's in what's known as a structured interview. There's one other interview that you might see. Go to LAPD, you're going to see this. Your first interview is going to be a background interview. It's kind of switched around because you'll see the background interview first, and they'll look at all of the minimum qualifications, all the things people have had trouble with in the past. And that's going to be drugs, alcohol, driving record, tax history, and theft from employers, shoplifting, all those things. So, you know, be prepared for that because you don't want to go in there and have them ask you, okay, if you ever stolen anything from an employer in a value more than $10, be able to talk about it. You know, and if you've got something in your background that's not really bad, like maybe you've got a drunk driving arrest, but it's several years old, 5 or 6 years old. Cops are going to be really leery about that one. Not Larry, but leery. So if you've got that in your background, it's not so much that you have it in your background. You can overcome that by telling the people what you've learned. What did that experience teach you? And how have you handled yourself since then? And that goes for most anything. A few things, DV with injuries, domestic violence with injuries. Well, that's going to be a tough one to get by. They are not going to be open to that. I have a friend from one of these classes that had the officer works for an agency out in the desert, and through a long set of circumstances, well, they're involved in a DV after they've been hired. No charges were filed, no criminal prosecution, but it comes up in their background, and the agency that she was trying to get into wouldn't take a step on it. So, and you can see why it's such a hot button issue now. So that's the interview. Check out the rest of the steps. I've made some comments about things that might be helpful for you, physical agility, all that. If you're thinking about the going to the police academy, you get hired by a police department, start your working out now. Start the physical part of it, because after you get through each of those hiring steps, you then go to an academy. Academy, I want to say, is 18 to 26 weeks, depending upon if you're working for a police department or for a sheriff's department. Sheriff's department have a longer academy because they deal with the jails, and and everybody goes to the jail, and everybody goes to the jail and spends time there. So, with that in mind, you will have that period of time. Get your physical stuff out of the way now. Get to where you can run 5 miles hard. You're never going to have to do it in the academy. You're going to have to do a mile hard for different PATs, physical ability tests, but you're not going to have to do it every day. If you go on a 5-mile run, it's going to be very slow. As slow as the slowest person that can actually run. Don't be the one that can't do the physical part, because that's just, it puts you in behind an 8-ball early. Now, I've posted a video from Austin, Texas on their academy, very similar kind of thing. The only thing that's really changed in the academy environment in the past 40 years, if not longer, is the fact that academics are now stressed much more. California, 42 learning domains. Each domain is a topic that you'll learn about, and you'll be tested on 41 of them, I think. You'll be tested on each of them, and you got to pass the test. If you take a learning domain and you fail the exam, then you get remediated. Somebody will sit down with you, go over questions, try to help you. Take it again, you fail it twice, you're out of the academy. Post won't take you, you'll have to go back through the process again. And if you fail the academy once, very unlikely somebody's going to pick you up, because they don't spend the money on it. I guess one thing here we should talk about quickly is the idea of self-sponsored or being sponsored in the academy. Being sponsored means you've been hired by an agency. I think now, with a narrow gene pool, meaning a narrow candidate pool, I would look to be sponsored. You can put yourself through the academy, but the self-sponsored really have a very, very high attrition rate. A lot of that is because they aren't quality candidates to be hired somewhere, so that hurts them. And a lot of that is also that they haven't been vetted for basic intelligence, writing skills, ability to do do different tasks and that. Figure a washout rate in the academy, 30 to 60%. Back in the day when it was really, really difficult, it was, my academy was a 60% washout rate. So that's just real basic on the academy. Much more in academics. Still going to see the stress portion of it. The first 6 weeks, 3 to 6 weeks, you're going to be hating life. You're going to, oh my God, what have I done to myself? And then after that 3 to 6 week period, you're going to go, all right, I can do this. And it becomes much easier, even though the stress is still there. Now you're starting to know how to act. You know how to get yourself prepared every day. You know how to, do the writing, what the studying is going to be like, what the time commitment, how to keep your firearm clean, how to put your uniform together, how to get to press it correctly, so it's crisp and looks new every single day. Those are the kind of things. But like I say, first 3 to 6 weeks, you're going to be hating life, wondering what you were possibly thinking. For those with military experience, as a friend of mine who was a former Army, was a former soldier, said, "Gosh, it was like Disneyland. I got to go home every night, and they weren't waking me up at 3 in the morning to yell and scream. It was pretty cool." So that's the academy. Fourth thing, you get through the academy. Now the next thing you have is field training. And in a police department, sheriff's department, you're going to have training with another deputy inside the custody facility. Field training, super hard, high intensity, lots of issues, very high level of scrutiny. You're going to feel like you can't do anything right. Now, all of those things that you learned in the academy, you have to apply instantly. You've got to know search and seizure. You've got to know criminal law. You've got to know elder abuse. You've got to know self-defense tactics. You've got to know firearms tactics. When to use a firearm, if you can, when can you pull it out of the holster? All of those things are things that you're going to have to be able to do really quick. And that sets in pretty fast. The biggest issues that you have with field training are what's called, or FTOs called, failure to engage. Inability of a trainee to talk to somebody, deal with the public. Really important. I mean, of course you know that's really important. But if you're not really comfortable talking with anybody at any time, if you can't walk up to the most intimidating professor that you have at school and have a casual conversation with them, now's the time to start. When I was an FTO, what I would do with my trainees is I'd take them to a shopping center, pull up in front of a business, point at the door, tell them to go in there, and I got 5 minutes to come back with some sort of personal information about the person there, about the person behind the counter. And I do it over and over and over and in different situations. Once you get some basic safety stuff down, bunches of car stops, follow up other officers, cover other officers. One thing that is really easy to do is to, have other officer has a car stop, people are outside, they're going to be searching a car, sit them down on the curb and then talk to them about anything. Doesn't matter. You're distracting them from what's going on with the car, with whatever the officers are going to find, and you're increasing your skill set. The inability to failure to engage is the one thing, and then the second big issue is multitasking. Usually, FTOs are able to get people through the report writing issues. Now, if you go to an agency that has really high quality, reporting standards, Anaheim's one, Irvine's another. One of those really high quality agencies, you're going to have to struggle with that. You will struggle with that, and you really got to work on it. Two types of FTO programs: the field training officer and the patrol training officer. One is the second. The PTO program is more of a some more current learning methodologies are applied. to it. The FTO program, field training officer, is basically old school. You've got a book, you've got a whole bunch of learning domains in there, learning points, and the FTO will quiz you on those on a daily basis, and you're going to have to respond. If you can explain them, great. If you demonstrate them, great. If you perform them, even better. But a really high intensity, because every day has a review of your performance over the day, and you'll start low, guaranteed, but you need to climb higher and higher in your ratings as you go along. FTO programs, upwards of 50-60% washout rates. Depends on the agency. Depends on where the agency is. Depends on how many people the agency needs. If they spend a lot of money on you and you're working for them, they're not anxious to kick you out the door, because that's lost money, lost revenue that can be used for something else. So how do you get through the recruitment process? How do you begin the recruitment process? Well, the first thing I want you to think about is, if you're really serious about law enforcement, you might look for what's called a CSO job, a community service officer job. And they do all kinds of stuff. They work the front desk, they maybe work in investigations or in records, maybe they write citations and parking citations in the field, take field reports, or some places they will be traffic investigators. Tough job to get, because it's a great job. But if you can get in there as what's called a CTI, civilian traffic investigator, great job. You'll learn how to investigate. You'll be forced to talk to people. You'll learn the penal code. You'll learn the vehicle code. You'll be around other officers. And the most important part is, you can see if that's the agency you want to work for. And I say that because you got political issues, you have all kinds of other things that occur. How do they treat people? If you're a woman, how does that organization treat women? And if they don't treat women well, that's something for you to know. You need to know right away. Then the last part, number 5, is AOT, Advanced Officer Training. There's a big list of stuff. But think back in this course, in the discussion boards, in your writing, how many times have you heard, seen, or made the suggestion that officers need more training? Well, that's all well and good, but the problem is you got to pay for it somehow. Imagine, working in a small agency, with 20 officers. If you get sent to training, somebody's got to fill your spot. And there's not a whole lot of fat in an organization like that. Do you pull a detective off of their caseload for that day? People that have cases that person's working on, they want to know what's going on with their case. Their level of being patient on it is finite. So that's the biggest problem that you have with this constant call for more and more training. And you look at the 42 learning domains, look at all of the different training opportunities and mandatory training that I've listed. Mandatory training for police managers, optional training, or police managers, supervisors, field training officers. There's mandatory training for line officers. You have SMIP, the Senior Management Institute for Police, for upper managers. That's a 3-week course away from California. You have the FBI Academy for managers. You have the Sherman Block Supervisory Institute for sergeants, and especially for newer sergeants. So there's a whole ton of stuff there, and then a whole list of other things, and then a constant ongoing requirement for so much training every so many years. And it's really expensive for a police department to do that. Okay, so that's the training portion of it, recruitment and training. I hope you've enjoyed the course, hope you've learned some stuff. And I hope that you feel a little bit more prepared if you were to decide to go into the business. With that being said,